The TV show Martin was a big hit in the 1990s. After Martin ended, there were plans for a spin-off. This new show was supposed to focus on Pam, played by Tichina Arnold.
That special woman is Pam. No!
You know, right before Tisha left the set, because she had to. It got to that point, and I understood it.
Many people were excited, but the spin-off never aired. It was canceled before it even started.
But Martin, unfortunately, you know, show business at a certain point in his life got the best of him. And when that happens, you see it happening, and there's nothing you can do about it.
We did a big report about why the show ended.
Oh, you did? What happened? What happened? What did people say?
As far as what the reaction or what this report was.
Whatever.
I mean, the stuff with Tisha.
Yeah.
And she found.
There were many reasons, including problems behind the scenes, drama between the cast members. Let's dive into the real story. The TV show Martin was one of the funniest and most loved sitcoms of the 1990s. It starred Martin Lawrence as Martin Payne, a loud and hilarious radio host who was always getting into crazy situations.
You do have that energy check moment, but at the same time,
the show also had a great supporting cast, including Tisha Campbell as his girlfriend Gina, Carl Anthony Payne, second as his best friend Cole, Thomas Mickle Ford as Tommy, and Tichina Arnold as Pam. Fans loved watching their funny arguments and wild adventures.
I said, Mama used to say, take your time, young man.
But something changed in the last season of Martin. The show started to have problems behind the scenes, and this affected the cast. One of the biggest problems was between Martin Lawrence and Tisha Campbell. Things got so bad that Tisha Campbell left the show before it ended.
But Martin, unfortunately, you know, show business at a certain point in his life got the best of him. And when that happens, you see it happening, and there's nothing you can do about it.
The writers had to figure out how to explain why Gina was not there. They came up with an idea. In one episode called Going Overboard, Martin, Pam, Cole, and Tommy go on a cruise. But Gina misses the boat. That was how they explained her absence for the rest of the season. After that, the writers had to get creative to keep the show interesting without her.
Tisha left the set because she had to. It got to that point, and I understood it.
As the fifth season continued, the show focused more on other characters, especially Pam. Pam was Gina's best friend and Martin's biggest rival. Fans loved her because she was strong, funny, and always had a comeback for Martin's jokes.
No, Gina, the truth is you're being influenced by inch-high private eye.
Since Gina was no longer part of the story, the writers started giving Pam more screen time. They even wrote an entire episode just for her. But this episode was not just any regular episode. It was actually a secret test for a new show. In the TV world, this is called a backdoor pilot. That means an episode is created to introduce a new show. If people like it, the network might decide to turn it into a full series.
Don't mind him, Mr. Phillips. He's just a little bitter. He was too short to be our ring bearer.
The episode that introduced her spin-off was called Going for Mine. In this episode, Pam loses her job and has to find new work. She ends up at a record company called Keep It Real Records. By the end of the episode, she gets a job as an A&R executive. This episode was supposed to be the beginning of Pam's new life in the music industry, which would have been the main focus of her spin-off show.
If it's magic.
Pam's new show had a strong supporting cast planned. Some of the actors involved were Dondre Whitfield, Jennifer Lewis, Anthony Johnson, and Phil Morris. There were even talks about Tyrese Gibson being part of the show. It was supposed to introduce new characters while still being connected to the Martin universe. Fans were excited, and many people thought she deserved her own show.
Nobody was talking to you, shorty, by nature.
So why didn't this spin-off happen? What went wrong? In a 2017 interview, Tichina Arnold gave some answers. She explained that networks change their minds all the time. Even if a show seems like a great idea, it doesn't always get made. There are many reasons why a show might not move forward. Sometimes it's about money. Other times, it's about scheduling or the network deciding to go in a different direction. Unfortunately, Going for Mine was one of those shows that never got picked up.
You are just the one I've been looking for.
Pam, I'm sorry. I already have a girl.
Even though Pam's spin-off never happened, Tichina Arnold continued to have a successful acting career. After Martin, she appeared in several TV shows, including The Jamie Foxx Show, Pacific Blue, The Norm Show, and One-on-One. In 2005, she got another big role as Rochelle in Everybody Hates Chris. This role made her even more famous, and fans loved her performance.
I don't care what you say, all right? Age is just a state of mind.
Although Going for Mine never became a real show, Tichina Arnold and Martin Lawrence reunited for other projects. They worked together in movies like Big Mama's House and The Round Hog. Even though their characters were always arguing in Martin, they still had a good working relationship in real life. It makes you wonder what would have happened if Pam's show had been made. Would it have been as successful as Martin?
I love you.
Back in the 90s, reaching 100 episodes was a big deal for TV shows. It meant the show was a hit and could keep making money through reruns. When Seinfeld reached 100 episodes in 1995, NBC threw a huge party for the cast and crew. But when Martin reached the same milestone in 1996, the celebration was disappointing. Instead of a big party, the cast only received gift baskets. This upset Martin Lawrence. Tichina Arnold later shared the story and said Lawrence was so unhappy that he walked off the set to talk to Fox about it. After that, the cast received better gifts. Arnold laughed about it later, but it was clear that the cast felt unappreciated.
Hi, I'm Johnny Gill.
And I'm Arsenio Hall.
This is Penny Hardaway. This is Brian McKnight.
This is Shaquille O'Neal.
Everybody's congratulating the cast and crew of Martin on their 100th episode.
Even though the 100th episode celebration wasn't great, fans were more upset about how Martin ended and why the spin-off never happened. The show was loved by millions, but it ended suddenly after 5 seasons. And, as earlier stated, Tisha Campbell, who played Gina, was hardly in any scenes with Martin Lawrence, who played Martin. In fact, they never shared the same space in the final episodes. Their last conversation in the show was done over the phone using a split screen. Many fans wondered what was going on, and soon they got their answer.
They offered me a national talk show. So guess what? We both gonna be working in LA.
In 1997, after leaving the show, Tisha filed a lawsuit against Martin Lawrence. She accused him of sexual assault, battery, and abuse. This was shocking news for fans who had no idea there were problems behind the scenes. The lawsuit revealed that the trouble had been happening for years. Tisha said that Martin had been inappropriate towards her from the very beginning. She claimed he kept asking her out, but she always said no.
I said, Mama used to say, take your time, young man.
Over time, she said his behavior got worse. By the second season, she said Martin was having angry outbursts on set. He would yell at people, threaten to fire crew members, and make her feel uncomfortable. As the show continued, things reportedly became unbearable for Tisha. She claimed that Martin would humiliate her in front of others, and that the stress made her sick. She even ended up in the hospital at one point. Despite all this, the show's writers kept putting Martin and Gina in romantic scenes together. Tisha asked them to stop writing scenes where she had to share a bed with Martin, but her requests were ignored. She also claimed that during kiss scenes, Martin would go too far, using his tongue without her consent. The breaking point came when Martin allegedly had a serious outburst on set. According to Tisha, it scared everyone. and she decided she couldn't take it anymore. She left the show before the final episodes were filmed and refused to return. That's why the last season had so many scenes without Gina. Even when Martin and Gina were supposed to be together, the show had to use tricks like phone calls and split screens to make it look like they were in the same scene.
They offered me a national talk show. So guess what? We both gonna be working in LA.
Years later, Reginald Ballard, who played Brew Man on the show, spoke about what he saw. He said that by the end of the series, Martin and Tisha couldn't even be at the studio at the same time. The tension was so bad that they had to film separately. Ballard admitted he didn't know all the details, but he said the situation was strange.
Let's heal. Let's keep in touch. Let's not let all this time go by.
There were also issues with his male co-stars. One of them was Carl Payne, who played Cole on the show. At first, Carl and Martin got along well, but over time, Carl noticed a change in Martin's behavior. He said that Martin started treating him badly. Carl never explained exactly what happened, but he made it clear that things were not good between them. He believed Martin was dealing with personal problems at the time, which may have affected how he treated people. Despite the tension, Carl stayed professional. He only spoke up when he felt he was being disrespected or treated unfairly.
Hey, Tommy, man, why don't you pass brother one of them tater skins? Oh, sure, bro.
Carl compared working on the show to being in a family. Families have arguments, but they also share good moments. He admitted that there were some great times on set, but the conflicts could not be ignored. However, he made one thing clear: he never had a problem with Martin. According to Carl, all the bad energy came from Martin's side.
I seen the picture with you two together. Was that the first time y'all seen each other in years?
Absolutely. And like literally 20-something years. Literally. Yeah.
The tension between them lasted for the entire run of the show. They never talked about their issues until years later, just before filming Martin, the reunion. After so much time, they finally sat down and had a conversation. They were able to let go of the past and move forward. Even though fans loved the chemistry of the cast, it's clear that things were not always as perfect as they seemed. Still, it was good to see them make peace after all those years.
Like, at the end of the day, the things you may have been mad about at 20-something, or, you know, you felt like whatever about, it's kind of like...
But Carl was not the only one who had issues with Martin. Another co-star, Garrett Morris, also had a troubled relationship with him. Garrett played Stan Winters, a fan-favorite character in the early seasons. However, after the second season, he suddenly disappeared. Fans were confused and wanted to know why he left the show. For Garrett Morris, before he joined the TV show Martin in 1992, he was already well known for his work in movies and television. But behind the scenes, Garrett was dealing with personal struggles, including addiction. Even while working on Martin, he was fighting his own battles.
Those people, Martin, that's not coming from you. That's woman.
Things took a tragic turn toward the end of the second season. One day, Garrett was walking to his parked car in Los Angeles when two men attacked him. Since he was a first-degree black belt, he fought back and managed to kick one of the attackers. Unfortunately, this only made the man angrier. The attacker pulled out a gun and shot Garrett in the chest and arm. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. The injuries were serious, and he fell into a coma. Doctors had to perform several surgeries to save his life.
And he had a gun like that. And I said, excuse me, and he shoots me and goes in there, messes up my intestines. I had to have a colostomy for like 8 months.
During his recovery, Garrett received the script for Martin and noticed something strange. His character, Stan, was written out of the show. The story said that Stan sold the radio station and left town. Garrett was still in the hospital when they asked him to film a short scene from his bed to explain his character's exit. At first, he thought this was just part of the storyline. But later, he found out that this was how the show was letting him go. When he asked if he was being fired, the answer was simply yes.
Because that's when the person who was producing Martin decided to fire me while I was actually in the hospital itself.
Even after leaving the hospital, Garrett's struggles were not over. One of his gunshot wounds became infected and he needed more surgeries. He had to wear a colostomy bag for 8 months and spent a year in a wheelchair. This was an incredibly difficult time for him. The pain, both physical and emotional, pushed him into a deep depression. He had lost his job and was dealing with serious health issues. But despite everything, he eventually decided to focus on moving forward and doing what made him happy.
Rats are not to be embarrassed by, Martin. That's how I built this empire of mine.
Garrett did return to Martin for one episode in season 3, where his character opened a restaurant with Martin. But after that, he never appeared on the show again. Later, in an interview, Garrett spoke about his firing. He believed that Martin Lawrence, who was also a producer of the show, was the one responsible for letting him go. Garrett even claimed that Martin spread stories about visiting him in the hospital and crying by his bedside, which Garrett said never happened. Martin Lawrence was one of the biggest comedians of the 90s. His show, Martin, was a huge success, making people laugh every week. But behind the scenes, Martin was struggling. The pressure of fame was a lot to handle. It was not just about acting and telling jokes. He had to deal with expectations, money, and the constant attention from the public. To cope with the stress, Martin started using marijuana. He thought it would help him relax, but instead, it made things worse. In May 1996, Martin had a serious breakdown. He was seen running in the middle of a busy street, shouting and swearing while carrying a gun. It was a shocking moment for many fans. The police had to step in to stop him before something bad happened. Later, in an interview, Martin admitted that he was high that day and didn't even remember how he ended up in the street. He also said the police did the right thing by stopping him. Thankfully, no one got hurt, and the situation ended without violence. But this was just the beginning of his troubles. Later that same year, Martin got into trouble again. This time, it was at an airport. He was caught trying to bring a gun onto a plane in his carry-on bag. People were confused and concerned about what was happening to him. Then, in 1997, he got into another problem when he hit someone in a nightclub. The court gave him probation, meaning he had to stay out of trouble, or he could go to jail. At the same time, Martin's personal life was also falling apart. His marriage was ending, and his wife accused him of saying terrible things to her. Divorce is already painful, but when it is public and messy, it becomes even harder. Martin was at the peak of his career, but behind the cameras he was dealing with a lot of pain. Over time, Martin Lawrence and Tisha Campbell made peace after their well-known issues on the set of Martin. They had problems back then, but they worked hard to move past them. In an interview, Tisha Campbell talked about how they had to forgive each other. She said the reunion was about celebrating what they had done together and how they had grown as people. Martin Lawrence also spoke about their past and said he had nothing but love for Tisha.
Oh, I know what I need.
You need a footstool. Thank you.
A what?
Even though they made peace, fans had different opinions. Some people blamed Martin for what happened on the show, while others felt that both Martin and Tisha made mistakes. Fans had strong opinions about it. One person commented online that they were young when it all happened and made bad choices. Some fans felt it was a shame that the show ended the way it did. They believed Martin was such a great show that it should have lasted 10 seasons instead of just 5.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about wanting you, girl.
When Tisha Campbell shared a video on Instagram looking back on the show, fans had a lot to say. She tagged her former co-stars, which made people talk even more. Some people still blamed her for the show ending. They left comments saying she was the reason the show got canceled. Other fans had a different reaction. They enjoyed the video and thanked her for sharing it. One fan even commented about how much history the show had and how much they still loved it.
The first time you ever said the L word.
Lick me?
Martin Lawrence also shared his side of the story about why the show ended. In an interview, he was asked about it. He simply said it was just time for the show to end. He didn't say much about the problems at the time, but he did admit that Tisha Campbell's lawsuit was part of what happened. Even though it was discussed, he made it clear that the lawsuit was not the reason the show ended. Martin said it was his decision to leave. He wanted to make a career move, so he decided to end the show. Many people thought Martin got canceled, but according to him, that was not true. He chose to walk away. There are also some interesting things people may not know about the show Martin and its cast. For example, Tisha Campbell and Tichina Arnold, who played Gina and Pam, were best friends long before the show started. They met when they were just 12 years old. Both of them were young actresses trying to make it in New York City. They met while auditioning for different acting roles and quickly became friends.
And the reason why I say that is because she's nuts.
You don't understand what I have to deal with.
You hear the voice? You hear it?
Every single year. I'm tortured.
Instead of seeing each other as competition, they supported each other. Tisha once said in an interview that they always cheered each other on, even when they were both trying out for the same part. Tichina said their friendship was natural, and she believed it was meant to be. When they were 16, they got roles in the musical Little Shop of Horrors. Working together on that project made them even closer. By the time Martin started in 1992, they were already best friends, and even lived together. It was no surprise that they both ended up on the show. Another fun fact about Martin is that Martin Lawrence loved to improvise. He didn't always stick to the script. Tichina Arnold shared in an interview that Martin often made up his own lines while filming. The first time he did it, the cast quickly realized that this was just how things were going to be. His improvisation made the show even funnier and unique. His unscripted moments were so hilarious that the other actors had a hard time keeping a straight face. Sometimes they tried not to laugh, but most of the time, they couldn't hold it in.
Yo, these your BADs?
Martin, what are BADs?
Big ass drawers.
The cast even made it into a game. They wanted to see who could hold their laughter the longest when Martin went off script. Thomas Mickle Ford, who played Tommy, was often the first to break character because Martin was just too funny. The way Martin acted on set made the show even more special and fun for the cast and the audience watching at home.
Where you want to go to the club for? Look, we got to get dressed, go to the club, and come back here. Why do that and we already here?
Out of all the episodes, Martin Lawrence has a favorite. When asked in an interview, he said his favorite episode was Guard Your Grill. In that episode, famous boxer Tommy Hearns appeared, and Martin's character got beaten up so badly that his head swelled up like a grapefruit. Martin said he loved that episode because he understood it on a personal level. When he was younger, he trained as a boxer. To stay out of trouble in his neighborhood, he learned how to box at the Sugar Ray Leonard Boxing Center. He got so good that he won a boxing championship when he was only 15 years old. His greatest strength in boxing was how fast he moved. However, one day, he got hit so hard that he ended up with a black eye. When his mother saw his injury, she put an end to his boxing career.
Time world champion Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Down goes Painting.
Another reason Martin was so popular was because of its famous catchphrases. The show gave the world some of the most memorable lines that people still use today. Many of these phrases became a big part of pop culture. One of the most famous catchphrases was, "Talk to the hand," which was a sassy way of telling someone you didn't want to listen to them. Another popular one was, "You go, girl." People use this to cheer someone on or show support.
By the way, that show had like some of the funniest catchphrases.
It did.
That we now have part of our vernacular.
Is that
I
crazy?
still say, talk to the hand because the face don't want to hear it.
Right. Nobody remembers that it actually came from us.
Another funny catchphrase was, "Get to steppin'." Martin would say this when he wanted someone to leave. Fans loved these lines so much that they started using them in real life. Even years later, Martin Lawrence still hears these phrases from fans. In an interview on The Tonight Show, he told Jimmy Fallon that people still shout Martin catchphrases at him all the time. The two phrases he hears the most are, "What's up?" and "You go, boy."
Hey, what's happening? What's up?
The phrase, "Waz up," became so popular that it was even used in Budweiser commercials. It also appeared in the comedy movie Scary Movie. This just shows how much of an impact Martin had on people. It wasn't just a funny show, it became a part of everyday culture.